Pope Francis died on Easter Monday. This was right after he spoke on Easter Sunday. Now, he has been sick with pneumonia. So they're saying that he died from, complications. The reason why we want to talk about Pope Francis is because this is probably the most progressive or progressive leaning Pope that I've seen in my lifetime. And who knows, probably that we'll ever see. We need to talk about some of the good things that Pope Francis did. Now, I know there's a number of people also online that are like, oh my God, he happened to die right after J.D. Vance met with him. He has been sick. He's been sick for a while. So just FYI, folks, let's not get down that rabbit hole. Okay, let's not go into that type of conspiracy. But let's take a look at some of the things that Pope Francis has done. I think this is really significant.
We do begin tonight with the death of Pope Francis, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, and a spiritual figure whose humility and tolerance was felt well beyond the church. Tonight, the Vatican revealing the Pope died of a stroke and heart failure, slipping into a coma just hours after his last appearance from the balcony in St. Peter's Square to celebrate Easter Sunday. During his 12 years as pontiff, Pope Francis proved himself to be the people's pope, reaching out to the poor, the forgotten, the people at the margins. From the moment the former cardinal from Argentina was introduced as Pope Francis, he set the church on a new course. The first pope from Latin America, the first Jesuit, the first to elevate women to positions of church authority, the first to allow priests to bless same-sex couples, asking early on as a pope, who am I to judge? And another first, Pope Francis agreeing to the first ever town hall with American television. Tonight, that moment, we waited at the door inside Vatican walls and then our walk right there across the courtyard with Pope Francis. Millions would watch as the Pope took questions from Americans back here in the U.S. But it has been a remarkable 24 hours. The Pope, who had been in failing health, his battle with pneumonia in the hospital and then out, and then appearing on Easter Sunday. There was so much hope he was getting better. But then the world learning he died just hours later. Tonight,
let's just pause here for a second. One of the things that I want to mention, he was the first pope that I heard of that was pretty open to LGBTQ, pretty open to it. It's like he said, hey, people are people. It's really not for me to judge what they are doing, what someone else is doing. And that said something that was kind of a change, right? He also continued to speak up in support for Gaza. He called out Israel, which again, it seems to be almost unheard of if you're talking about the popes that we've heard of before. It was very different from what the world was used to. So he shook things up a little bit. And I do feel like that was somewhat needed. Let's go on a little bit more here.
Here, the Pope's will now revealed, his final wishes. ABC's chief international correspondent James Longman at the Vatican tonight, leading us off.
Francis kept people at the heart of his papacy, and tonight thousands flocked to the Vatican to remember him and his message of humility. His sudden death a shock, just hours after greeting the faithful for Easter. Tonight, the Vatican says the 88-year-old suffered a cerebral stroke, fell into a coma, and had irreversible heart failure. He died at 7:35 this morning, local time.
Con profondo dolore.
The Vatican with this announcement, saying Francis dedicated his entire life to his church, teaching universal love, especially toward the poorest and most marginalized. The first Latin American pope dying at the holiest time of the year for Catholics.
Fairly subdued atmosphere here on the square. I mean, yesterday there were thousands of people here, all cheering on Pope Francis. Look, people knew he was sick, but I think they hoped that he was getting better, and now he's gone. I think it's just shock.
And sometimes that happens, you guys, like sometimes, and I don't know if you guys have had like maybe family members that this has happened to, but I've had this happen where sometimes someone is sick and then they get better and then they die after they get better. So that has been known to happen. Like even when he was there on Sunday, I mean, like you could tell he wasn't as healthy as he was before, but he showed up anyway, you know?
This was the extraordinary scene on Easter Sunday in St. Peter's Square. Francis greeting thousands from the Pope-mobile, appearing frail but waving, blessing children in the crowd. That appearance came shortly after the traditional Easter Sunday Mass, where crowds heard what would be the Pope's final message and received his last blessing.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
His voice just a whisper, wishing the crowd a happy Easter. His last message to the world, the same one he spent his life preaching: unity, service, and compassion for society's most vulnerable. Pope Francis spent weeks in the hospital battling pneumonia in both lungs, suffering 2 emergencies that nearly killed him. But
can you imagine having pneumonia in both of your lungs? I mean, pneumonia itself is, it's brutal. If you've ever known someone that had it, it's brutal, especially as if you're older. But imagine having it in both lungs, right? So, yeah.
Seeming to recover, he even made some appearances.
Hello. So good to see you.
Seen here with Vice President Vance on Easter Sunday, one of his last meetings with a world leader.
I know you've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
Today, the Vice President reflected on that meeting, writing, "I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. May God rest his soul." President Trump at the White House today.
He's a very good man who loved the world, and he especially loved people that were having a hard time, and that's good with me.
Former President Obama and First Lady Michelle, who met with the Pope at the White House in 2015, issued a joint statement saying Pope Francis was the rare leader who made us want to be better people. Tonight, cardinals are traveling to the Vatican from around the world, sealing off the official papal apartment, part of a centuries-old tradition, preparing for the Pope's funeral. And tonight, we've learned Pope Francis' final wishes, the Vatican releasing his will late today, saying he wanted to be buried at St. Mary Major Basilica. Francis saying the tomb must be in the earth, simple, without particular decoration, and with the only inscription, Franciscus.
That's part of it. So that's part of obviously what happened to Pope Francis. But I just want to get into the Gaza part about this, because again, like, he called out Israel. Not only did he call out Israel, but he said this is a genocide, and he said it before he died. So he has been in contact with people in Gaza this entire time, up until the day he died. So let's take a look at that. This is from Al Jazeera. I think this is important for people to see. I don't think everybody realizes this, how he was continuing to stay in touch with people in Gaza.
When it came to the Palestinians, Pope Francis was arguably the most supportive pope in modern times. In the aftermath of October 2023, a little more than a month into the war in Gaza, he said what Israel was doing was terrorism, and the humanitarian crisis there could be considered a genocide.
This morning I received 2 delegations, one of Israelis who have relatives held hostage in the Gaza Strip, and another of Palestinians who have relatives imprisoned in Israel. They suffer so much, and I heard how both sides suffer. Wars do this, but we have gone beyond wars. This is not war. This is terrorism.
For an institution that for centuries used papal decrees to legitimize territorial expansion and European colonialism, and in modern times remained neutral on the Israel-Palestine conflict, Pope Francis's comments were a radical departure from the Church's legacy and its usual stance, but consistent with his reformist papacy and commitment to social justice.
Yesterday, children were bombed. This is cruelty. This is not war.
So you hear that? Yeah. And more people should have called it out back then.
Pope Francis did not stop at words. He reached out directly to those suffering in Gaza with frequent video calls. Nearly every night since Israel's bombing campaign began, he called the Holy Family Church in Gaza, which sheltered hundreds of Christians and Muslims. The brief calls were a small but powerful gesture, the Vatican said, offering connection and hope amidst isolation.
Yesterday I called, as I do every day, the parish in Gaza. They told me, today we ate lentils with chicken. It's important because these days they weren't used to it and only made some vegetables. They were happy, but let us pray for Gaza, for peace.
In his final days, even in critical condition, he stayed in touch with the Gaza parish.
We rejoice to hear his voice. This is always comforting, knowing that despite his delicate state of health, he continues to think and pray for everyone, for peace in Gaza, and thanking us At the same time, for our constant prayers, give us great joy even in the midst of so many trials.
And months before his passing, Pope Francis appointed the first new cardinal of Palestinian origin to the College of Cardinals. When the world's most powerful leaders failed to act, many offering unquestioning support to Israel or remaining silent in the face of massacre after massacre, people in Gaza will remember Pope Francis for seeing their suffering clearly and speaking of it plainly. A rare moral voice rising above political calculation.
Yeah. So that was another thing. Like I said, he's probably been the most left leaning pope that I'm aware of. But yes, he has passed away, and I don't know. I don't know who they would put in his place, but I wouldn't be surprised if it would be someone who's the exact opposite, right? Someone that would be supportive of Israel. I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. And that would be sad. I think that would be sad. Whatever you think of religion, I don't care if you're Catholic or not. I'm not Catholic, but I think that if the next pope is someone who unequivocally backs Israel, that's going to be really sad. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.